distinct honor now to welcome to the stage our keynote speaker and guest artist, Vivian Cavalieri. A lawyer by profession, she was raised in Manhattan and Venice. Venice is my favorite city, and I was just in New York City yesterday. So I'm like, I don't know. It was cold yesterday. I'll take Venice. And she first set out to be an artist, majoring in art history at another little school by the name of Harvard, concluding that she lacked artistic talent because she was unable to paint or draw well. That's like me. I love to sing, but nobody wants to hear me do it, I promise you. She decided to she just decided, I'm not an artist, I'll just go to New York University School of Law. Following graduation, she spent the next 20 years practicing law in Washington, D.C. and New York before returning to her art. She describes herself as a self-taught visual artist focusing on social justice, including the rights and the perceptions of women. She creates her three-dimensional miniature scenes she calls assemblages in her studio, and I'm not going to say the name of the island. You know where the horses are. That one. We had the good fortune of connecting with Vivian via email when she reached out to tell us how delighted she was to run across our website while she was researching the role of women in World War II for her most recent series, From War to Peace, World War II Opportunity, Post-War Domesticity. Impressed by our mission and virtual exhibit, she was eager to visit, and as they say, the rest is history. So we're delighted to host From War to Peace, World War II Opportunity, Post-War Domesticity, an homage to the women of World War II. The exhibition juxtaposes the critical roles that millions of women played during the war with the post-war expectation of returning to traditional gender roles. Featuring 11 assemblages, each draws the viewer into this World War II women's world of contradictions. You know, from going at Rosie the Riveter and now just hush up and bake a cake. Please welcome Vivian Cavalieri to the podium.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's an extraordinary honor to be standing here today on Veterans Day at the Military Women's Memorial. This day we honor the millions of veterans, men and women, whose courage, diligence, and selflessness have safeguarded our nation and its ideals. This memorial ensures that the service of women in the military is not a footnote, but an integral part of our nation's story and is recognized and remembered with due and equal honor. You've just heard a mention of how World War II transformed women's lives, the doors it opened, and the diminished expectations faced once peace returned. I grew up during a time of such diminished expectations, attending an all-girls school in Manhattan in the 1960s. We were encouraged to work hard, but as we were expected simply to become well-educated wives and mothers, we were never offered any role models who challenged the status quo. So it wasn't until a few years ago, after reading Liza Mundy's book, Code Girls, that I learned about the 11,000 female code breakers who cracked enemy messages during the war. Digging further into the history of women who served, I learned that it wasn't just thousands of women serving as code breakers, but hundreds of thousands serving in every role imaginable, perhaps not directly in combat, but often directly in harm's way. Pilots who tested aircraft, nurses ministering on the front lines, some spending years as prisoners of war. My respect for these women and my sense of injustice at their absence from the history books inspired me to create a series of assemblages titled From War to Peace. Through these 11 assemblages, or shadow boxes, I aim to restore these women to the narrative, to present them as the trailblazers they were, and to highlight their intellect, courage, and a devotion to service so deep that the military determined to retain their talents despite public skepticism. I designed the works with two overall artistic goals. First, to encourage the viewer to approach by creating an attractive, small-scale scene. Most assemblages include a segment of a necklace that I designed during the 10 years that I spent creating jewelry. I wove together amber, semi-precious stones, pearls, shells, and, in memory of my Venetian father, at least one bead of Milano glass. These necklaces had been designed purely as objects of beauty, using them in shadow boxes, often as dividers between service and home, imbued them with meaning. My second artistic goal was to enable viewers to engage with the individual objects presented in the works. That's why I frame using museum glass. Its clarity creates the illusion that there's no barrier between the viewer and the art. Viewers sense that they're part of the scene and can reach out and touch the items. And these items are layered with history and meaning. The assemblages incorporate wartime posters and photographs alongside objects evoking the worlds these women moved between war and home, service and domestic life. I've chosen 4 of the 11 works to illustrate these details and explain some of the symbolism, and you can see them on the screens around you. The first work in the series, Code Girls, honors the 11,000 cryptanalysts mentioned earlier. Like code breaking itself, this piece is a puzzle to be solved. The 2 crosswords reference recruiters' first question to potential code breakers. Do you like crossword puzzles? When rearranged, the letters in these 2 words spell codebreaker. The nautical imagery references the Navy because it was the first branch of the military actively to recruit women as codebreakers. And on the face of the playing cards, included here to represent chance and fate, are the first few numbers of a decrypted message sent by the Japanese in October 1944. As with most of the shadow boxes, the narrative moves from left to right. Here, a nursery scene hints at the post-war push towards domesticity. The ABC blocks contrast with the letters and numbers to the left. But the crib is more than just a symbol of home. In code breaking, the crib is a clue used to solve a cipher. This crib, then, is a reminder that women's abilities didn't disappear simply because the opportunities closed. A second assemblage, Mail Call, centers on the women of the 688, a largely black battalion who helped sustain troop morale by processing millions of backlogged letters under grueling circumstances. Sustaining morale sounds awfully abstract and even of secondary importance, but for those fighting abroad, these letters from home were lifelines, helping them overcome the fear, loneliness, and the trauma, and reminding the troops for whom and for what they were fighting. The design of Mail Call was inspired by a letter my mother had sent to her brother, who had recently fought in the Battle of the Bulge. Reading her letter, I imagined how her brother must have felt reading it, which underscored for me the importance of connecting the home front to those fighting overseas, and reinforced how vital the mission of the 688 had been in keeping that connection alive. Accompanying that letter were 2 records of my mother singing an aria, her performance divided, as she explains, into 2 records per Army regulations. Those are the 2 miniature records shown, delivered from the family hearth. But in contrast to Code Girls, with its crib on the right, Mail Call presents a closed-off soda fountain, connecting the story of the women in this battalion to the civil rights movement, a further battle for equality to be faced upon their return. A third assemblage, Fly Girls, honors the Women Air Service Pilots, or WASP, more than 1,000 licensed pilots recruited to take on a remarkable range of missions, They ferried aircraft across the country, tested new planes, including the B-29 Superfortress, and towed targets for simulated strafing missions. Based at Avenger Field in Sweetwater, Texas, they flew collectively over 60 million miles. But this path was not easy. Resented by some families of male pilots sent into combat, the Wasp even reportedly faced sabotage, sugar poured into their fuel tanks. Evoking their challenges, the winged figure and candelabra in the piece reference the myth of Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, a metaphor for daring, ambition, and the price of breaking boundaries. Yet the gold tones chosen for this work celebrate the pilot's many and ultimate victories, including the belated granting of military status and veterans benefits in 1977 and the receipt in 2010 of the Congressional Medal of Honor. The last piece I'll mention, The Girl with the Future, was one I hadn't planned on making. At first, my focus was on professions that opened to women during the war, and nursing was already a female-dominated field. But as the series evolved, so did its scope. So when the memorial suggested including a work honoring Army and Navy nurses, I was glad to oblige. And ironically, this piece has become my favorite. It draws from 3 recruiting posters, each striking a distinct tone. On the left, an idealistic image speaks to those on the home front. A radio, like those families gathered around to hear FDR's fireside chats, anchors the scene, while a photograph of one of my father's ration cards peeks out from the flower above. At the center, a fragment of the poster captures the intensity and endurance required of wartime nurses. The nurse's left hand reaches out above the cover of the booklet, If You Should Be Captured, a nod to the nurses who became prisoners of war. To the right, a poster offering women a career in nursing hangs in the office of a school nurse, bridging service and a civilian career. Overall, this work represents how wartime service gave women not only skills, but confidence, the sense that they could continue working and contributing long after the war ended. The nearly 400,000 women who served in uniform during World War II proved what women could do when given the chance. And they set in motion changes that still resonate today. Their achievements deserve to be remembered, and my hope is that From War to Peace helps to keep their memory alive. Having the series exhibited here at the memorial is a privilege. I'm deeply grateful to all those who worked so hard on the presentation and installation, and to the women whose service transformed a nation, and to all who served and serve today. Thank you.